What is up, everybody? We are live. I'm so excited today. Man, we have a special guest in Andrew here. Man, one of the things that I want you to do right now in this moment, if you're watching this, whether it's live or on the replay, hashtag replay if you're watching on the replay, is I want you to think of what idea do you have that's worth spreading? What idea do you have that's worth spreading? It's funny. We're in the political season, and today's last day to vote. So make sure you get out and vote. They say, and a lot of people have opinions. A lot of people have thoughts about what other leaders are standing for, and it's cool to critique everyone else. It's cool to say, "Man, I don't like what they stand for. I don't like how they did this. I don't like what they said on social media." But the real way that we grow, the real way that we evolve, the real way that we progress as a society is by standing in our own truth, is by shedding our own light, not by gossiping about other people or complaining about what other people stand for, or don't stand for that matter. And so I would like to learn from you, like if you're watching this, like what is your idea worth spreading? What is your truth that you're standing on? What do you feel we can do to really move the dial for in our communities? Because that's what we're about here at TEDx Alexander Park. I almost said Dupree Park. Like I gotta get out of that. TEDx Alexander Park. We're about sharing ideas that can impact and transform communities. Okay. And I can't think of a better guest than Andrew McConnell. I keep saying that on every guest, but still, everybody has been the best. We're going through the top people right now. We're like getting all the amazing, brilliant people. And Andrew, I was really impressed with your background, just the variety of experiences that you have, having, obviously going to Harvard. And I personally like that you used to be, a really high level swimmer. I can't swim. Well, let
Well,
me say
let's fix
I
that.
can swim, but not like that. And so to see that you had that sports background, I have that sports background. The things that you're stepping into today, obviously with Rented, I know you've had another business where you're doing, similar with vacation rental homes. I think it was
Right.
before. So really excited just to dive in about you, your story, and then what you feel is an idea worth spreading, and like really just let's unpack that a little bit and let's
Yeah.
be able to have a quality discussion. So I'll stop talking and we'll get into you and your presentation. So let us know kind of a little bit of your journey, where you grew up from, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So my journey, I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, while my parents were in med school. So they were both students. They met while they were in med school. I was born there. And so grew up with them working very, very hard, having really good role models for what hard work can do. And we moved around the South a bit. So I lived in North Carolina, Alabama, uh, finished high school in Florida. My parents now live in Atlanta. I moved to Atlanta in '08. And we talked about the high level swimming. Like I was big on labels, identifying myself as something, right? So there was a period of my life I was a swimmer. That was my identity. That was what I did, and made the national team and was Division I All American, right? Like competed at that level, and then I got hurt, and I was still swimming, but I wasn't competing at the same level. And I was, okay, so then who am I if I'm not this, right? This is my identity. So then I was a student. I was still in school. I was a student. Got very, very serious in school. Wrote a senior thesis, honors thesis, went to law school in the US and the UK at Harvard and Cambridge. I was very much into the student identity. Then found I didn't want to be a lawyer. So, well, if I'm not a lawyer, then what am I? So I was a consultant and worked at McKinsey doing economic development work in Afghanistan and teacher effectiveness work.
Mm,
And that was my identity for a while.
mm,
And then I started to realize I don't have to be one thing, right? I can be me, and that can be an accumulation of things that I get a shape, I get a change as they better describe who I am and what I am. And so about 10 years ago, almost exactly, like really 10 years ago this week, I quit working for other people, founded my first company, which was Vacation Futures, and have been an entrepreneur ever since. And that's what I spent the past 10 years doing. Got pretty involved in the community, served on a lot of nonprofit boards and other things. And then COVID hit, and right, you didn't have the commute anymore. You didn't have as many in-person meetings. And I realized that my driving force in kind of my career, my profession has been impact, right? Mentoring other people, whether it was within my company or advising through Techstars and other programs, other companies. And I wasn't able to get the same level of interaction to impact. I thought, how can I do this? And I'd been writing a lot for Forbes over the years and thought, well, what if I could take some of the things I learned and put it into a book to give to a broader audience, to help more people. And then in just this year, in June, published Get Out of My Head, Creating Modern Clarity with Stoic Wisdom. Immediately got up to top 5 in the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And not a week goes by that somebody doesn't reach out and say, thank you so much for writing this. This completely changed my life. And what I realized is, as I was thinking, what's the next business I start? What's the next thing I do? I could go focus on individual tactical things like, oh, this area within climate, this area within social impact, this area. And it could have a great impact in that one area. I could build the expertise over time in that one area. But if I wanted to have the broader impact, positive impact across, it was human enablement. How can I unlock greater potential for every person to do more for individuals so that whatever their area is, they're going to be that much more effective. If I could go help enable people to be 10% more effective, every 10 people I do that, that's 100%. That's more than me going and doing something myself. And so how can I amplify that? And so the big idea really is we live in a very materialistic society, right? We're always thinking, hey, what's the next thing? What's the new gadget? What do I buy? How do I move up? And the reality is, as we buy these things, we don't own them. We don't own anything. Russian billionaires have learned that yacht doesn't really belong to you. Somebody can take that away anytime. These things can be taken away. Your body, COVID, if we didn't know before, the flu, COVID, any virus can come in. They take our body over. They can shut us down. But our mind is the one thing from the day we are born that is ours, that we own. And yet we spend our whole life renting the pieces back that we gave away to social media. We gave away to the news cycle. We gave away to that person who cut you off in traffic. We gave away to things that we think might happen in the future that we're worried about, or replaying events from the past, as opposed to being here, being now. And so that's my big idea is, hey, stop being a renter. Who owns your mind? You do, if you exercise ownership. And so how do you actually do that?
Ownership is a powerful term. And I want to dive into how you see the difference of someone who is renting versus owning as it relates to their mindset. I think that's cool, especially given your brand positioning as well. That's a cool tie into what you do from a personal brand and then also organizationally. But I wanted to kind of extract some wisdom from that, whole season of like, I'm stepping into full entrepreneurship for the first time. I know it's been 10 years, but I know that there's a lot of people post-pandemic who are exploring whether it's entrepreneurship or new career paths. Like they're stepping into something new, and would love to know, like if you could, tell your former self 10 years ago as you're stepping into entrepreneurship of like, hey, here's what you need to know to be successful. Here's what you can expect. What would some of those nuggets be that you would share with that former version of yourself for those who are in that similar transition?
Yeah, it really is adaptability. I mean, if you don't have a curious mind, if you don't maintain that humility and curiosity, you're going to miss what you can build. You still might build something good, but you're not going to build something great. And the thing that you built that was good, it's not going to stay good because the world around you is changing, right? Herodotus said, no man steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man, right? Your business isn't the same. The market you're interacting with isn't the same. Your competitors, your customers, they're changing because the world around you is changing. And if you don't have that hunger and that curiosity and that humility to say, I was wrong, or maybe I was right, but I was right then, and now the world's different, I need to change, you're going to miss what you can do.
Look at that. Was there a major mistake, maybe a big failure that you had over the past 10 years that, man, like that you learned a hard lesson from? So what was the mistake? And then more importantly, like what was the lesson that you learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, I made a whole bunch of mistakes. I think early on, one of the mistakes was just not valuing myself appropriately. Seneca said, no man values anything less than himself, and valuing my time and thinking, yes, this needs to get done. Yes, I can technically do it, but is this the best use of my time? Is there something else that I could be doing that's higher impact? And should I be paying somebody else to do it? Should I find ways to automate this thing? And really rolling back to understand what it is that is my unique contribution that I and only I can do, and putting all the time that I have into those things. Because other things, if other people can do them, why does it need me? It doesn't.
Mm, mm, mm. Love it. Great shares. Appreciate that. Let's dive into the owner versus renter mentality. For you, what's the difference? How can we be able to tell if we're operating from one paradigm versus the other?
Well, if you're always feeling you don't have enough time, right? You're scrambling, you're trying to fit pieces in. You say, oh, I don't have time for myself. I care about my health, but I don't have time to eat healthy. I care about my health, but I don't have time to exercise. I care about my family, but I'm not getting the time that I want with them because I'm stretched here. Right? If then that means you are renting. You have all these things you say you care about, you say you value, but you don't have the space to rent back in your own life from these other things that have filled it. They own your time. They own your mind. If you've ever found yourself sitting at dinner, right? Like you say you got the time. Say, hey, I'm going to have an hour with the family. I'm going to sit down at dinner. It's going to be beautiful. But you're not really listening. You're thinking back to something else. You're thinking back to something your boss said. You're thinking back to something you're worried a client said or will say tomorrow.
Right.
They own your mind. They just took your mind and your time from you right then. You're left with the pieces that you forget that, and that you're able to get there. So that's the difference between rentership and ownership. An owner says, hey, I have an hour that I'm going to spend working on this problem. Go spend that hour. I'm fully in it. I'm in it working on this problem. Before that hour, after that hour, I'm where my mind wants to be. I'm with my family. I'm fully lost in the magic of this moment with my child. I'm fully lost in the eyes of my spouse as we tell each other, how much we love each other. I'm not thinking about all these other things. Those people don't own my time and my mind. I do. I decide when they get space and for how much.
Love it. Love it. Love it. I get it. Ownership versus renting, taking responsibility, holding ourselves accountable to the things that we value. I remember doing a corporate leadership exercise where we were going through listing out our core values, and we started to list them out, and it was like, hey, don't just write values that you think are a good idea. Try to identify values that you actually do on a consistent basis, because it's not really a core value if it's not shown in the priority of your time. If you
and
can't,
how you rank them. How you rank them. There'll be a tension. There'll be a tension. They'll be at odds at times. You say, hey, I really value structure, and I really value flexibility.
Yeah.
You're going to end up in moments where you're going to have to trade one off versus the other. And which do you value more?
Yeah.
Right? I did a similar exercise, right? Years and years ago of what are my top values. And I did 10. Here are my top values. I realized consistently, like 10's too many. That's not a useful filter for me to have that many. I had to go back to 5. And then I did my ranking. And my initial ranking was what I thought they should be. And then I watched how I live my life. I said, that's not my ranking. That's not how I prioritize. Here's my ranking. This is like, and there's a separate question of, hey, do I want to change my priorities? Do I want to change how I live my life? But at that time I said, no, I see how I'm doing it. And I understand that this is actually what I value. This is my ranking of values right now.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Yeah. Get out of my head. Creating modern clarity with Stoic Wisdom. Such a great title. How'd you come up with the title?
Back to this idea of ownership versus rentership, right? That I think of this analogy of we can't stop people walking down the street in front of our house, right? They're going to walk by. But we can decide, do I open my door and let them just move in and start eating out of my refrigerator, sitting on my couch and making a mess in my living room? I get to decide that. We would never do that with our house. We wouldn't say, hey, stranger, come in off the street. You own my house. Just tell me where I can sit. Tell me when I can go to bed, right? Like we would never do that with our house, but we do that with our mind all the time. And so saying, get these tenants out of your mind. You have jerks living rent-free in your head. Stop it. Evict them.
Okay.
Right now.
Oh, fires on that. You've got them living in your head. Unwanted tenants. Woo! Look at that. Get out. Get out.
Get out. Exactly. One lady read the book. She said, the next your follow-on needs to be "Get Out of My Bed." It's like, well, that's a different kind of book.
There you go.
I'm not dealing with that one.
I mean, even if from a thought level and not a sexual level, I mean, you think about how many times we go to bed rehearsing our problems, nursing our problems, worrying about our problems, imagining false scenarios of our fear. And like we're living in this frenzy. And I know because I battled anxiety and, clinically, I've been diagnosed with depression, but, self-diagnosed with anxiety. Actually, I have been clinically diagnosed with anxiety. See? I'm having anxiety right now. But, one of the things that was in my control was what I chose to think about before I went to bed. And if I was worrying about tomorrow's problems, if I was anticipating and being afraid of tomorrow's opportunities, then I would go to sleep and I would have my heart would be racing and I would break out in sweat and I would wake up out of my sleep and I would have irregular sleep patterns because of sharing my bed space, my head space with worry and doubt and fear and all the things that come along with that. So I do it. Next part 2, get out of my bed.
Yeah, I mean, that gets back to that ownership versus mentorship, right? So you may have said to yourself, theoretically, hey, I have these 8 hours, these 10 hours I'm going to put to work. And I have these 6 to 8 hours I'm going to sleep. Then you get into bed and you have the 8 hours, you're in the bed, but you're not sleeping because you gave even more and more time to all that work.
Right.
And so what I'd say in that situation is, hey, maybe it wasn't 8 hours. Maybe it was 8.5. Maybe you need that extra 30 minutes to sit there and plan the next day, to think through, like, what is it that's taking your mind in those times? And if you can take those 30 minutes each day and put it to the work, then maybe you get 90 minutes back when you get to the bed, right? That's the trade-off.
Right,
Hey,
right.
Or maybe you don't need more time. You just take 30 minutes from the same 8-hour block and say, instead of doing this, I'm now going to plan for tomorrow.
Right.
And get ahead of it. Because then that helps me clear my head from these tenants. Like, hey, I told you I was running this space for you for these 8 hours. You don't get after this.
Exactly.
I'm giving it to you right now.
Yeah.
But after this, boom, you're out. You're out the door. You don't get it anymore.
Yeah. Now that helps boundaries, right? Like I think who was it? Dr. Henry Cloud wrote a really good book on boundaries. I highly recommend it. But boundaries are so important. That's what you're describing. Like, hey, here's my cutoff for this. Like I gave it a space, I gave it time, I gave it attention, I gave it presence, I gave it focus, I gave it creative thought. And like I'm gonna have a cutoff and just trust that things will unfold and work out. Worrying never solved any problems.
No,
but for some reason we think it does. Preparation does.
Yeah.
Asking questions does. Getting coaching and mentoring does. For sure. Man, I like to there's a couple of angles I want to dive in with you, but here's one. I was thinking about, mindset talks and the I consider myself sometimes I speak to people. I feel like if you are any type of influencer or change in someone's life, you're always addressing the way people think. You change the way you think, you change your life, right? But what are some of the common pushbacks that you get from people when you're sharing these principles from your book or from your life experience that causes them to be resistant towards implementing these principles shared in your book? What are some of the pushbacks you get?
Yeah, I get slightly less pushback and more clarifying questions, right? Maybe some unrealistic expectations, right? Of saying, okay, well then how do I turn this off? Say, whoa. You can't turn it off. Look, there's a reason our mind works like this, and we can get into all this. There's a whole
Let's get into it. Let's do it.
There's a whole bunch of evolutionary biology on why our mind works in this way. There's hundreds of thousands of years biology behind that we're not going to change. But while you can't turn off your subconscious, you can train yourself to get better at noticing, at observing, saying, oh, that tenant just tried to come in. No, I'm not opening the door right now. As opposed to just passively, the door's open all the time. Anybody walks in, they move in. So if you want to get into the why are we like this, 250, 300,000 years humans existed, right? For 298,000 of those years, we're hunters and gatherers. We're out in the plains, we're out in the savannas, right? And we live in this environment with our 5 senses. We're seeing the gazelles running, the zebras grazing, the giraffes walking around. We're hearing the wind blowing. We're feeling it on our skin. We're smelling the animals around us, the plants blooming, right? We can taste the salt coming off the water. And our brains evolved to take in 11 million bits of data every single second. 11 million bits. But the only reason that we're here is to pass on our genes, right? Like the only goal is to stay alive, pass on our genes. So our brain, even though it was bringing in this 11 million bits, it's still only able to process 300,000 years ago and today, 50 bits, 50 out of 11 million.
Wow.
So you think about, hey, who was our ancestor out on the plane? Well, say there was one and they heard a little rustling on the side. I say, no, I'm stopping. I'm smelling the roses. I'm enjoying this beautiful sunset, this beautiful view. That may work 999 times. That 1 in 1,000 times that's a lion, that person got eaten. And that's, 1,000 times, that's 3 years. Those genes did not pass on. Those people died. We did not get those genes of the stop and smell the roses people. What about the one that heard the rustling? And they say, oh, that's the 50 bits. I'm going to pay attention. But 9 times out of 10, it's a meerkat. It's not a big deal. The optimist. Well, the 10th time, that person got eaten. We did not get those genes. We did not get the optimist genes. We got the one that said, of all these amazing things I could focus on, of all this information coming in, I'm going to focus on this one threat, this really scary thing, and I'm going to extrapolate it to the worst possible thing it could be. Right? Those are the people that survived. And that's why Andy Grove, the CEO, early CEO of Intel, said, only the paranoid survive. It's true. Only the paranoid survive. Those are the genes that came through to us. But you know what? For the past couple thousand years, we've been living in cities. We don't have lions that are going to jump out of the bushes at us anymore. We're not constantly under physical threat. But our minds, even if it's an email, we have the same response in our minds as if it was a lion that was going to eat us.
Right.
We see our boss calling or texting, oh my God, they're doing it because they want to fire me, because they're so mad about it. Like it jumps to jumps to jumps.
Yeah.
And that we don't overcome that. We don't overcome that biology. But what we can do is understand, oh, that's how my mind would be if I stayed as a renter. If I didn't start acting like an owner. If I didn't say, wait a minute, who's knocking at my door right now? Oh no, I'm looking through the people. I don't want to answer the door. I'm going back to the kitchen.
Yeah. So powerful, man. Let's go. Let's go. What are some tools that you use to practice greater levels of awareness and controlling your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there are a whole bunch, right? Like that. Honestly, that's a big reason I wrote the book. And each chapter, so there are all these books, right? That you get, oh, it's this aha moment. I feel so good. I'm ready to go. And then you put it down and you move to the next book, right? And this doesn't. It says, okay, great. This is it. This is the science. This is how people put it. And then here's the exercise that you can now take and go do. And so one is start off knowing your value, right? You said, what is the one thing I kind of wish I knew and wish I had known, was knowing my value. So going down to your value, there's one thing. How can you expect anyone else to value you adequately if you don't know your own value?
That's right.
And so know what that value is. And you can know that value to you, but you also have to know it in a market context of like, okay, well, I value my time at $100 an hour. Okay. Now the work that you're doing, are people able to go hire people to do that work at $50 an hour? It's $5 an hour? Then it doesn't matter. You think you're worth this. If you're doing this activity, that's what the value of that time is worth.
Right.
You don't have to stay there. You can go up level. You can go change the skills that you have.
Yeah.
You can go change what you do, right? So I can go mow a lawn. I'm capable. I have 2 legs. I can go do that. Is my time mowing a lawn as valuable as my time going and building technology companies? Probably not. I'm better off paying somebody to go mow the lawn and spending my time doing this, because only I can go build this company. Only I can be the dad to my daughter. Only I can be the husband to my wife. These are things that have value totally unmatched to what I can just go hire in the open market. And so really understanding that value and knowing that it changes based on the skills you build, and it changes based on what you're doing at any given time. It doesn't matter if a lawyer's technically worth $800 an hour, if they go bill $800 an hour. If they're just sitting watching TV, that time is not valuable to anyone. Maybe that person values it, but no one's going to pay them $800 an hour to watch TV. That's not a valuable activity to anybody. So you have to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. And then it's, once you know your value, the exercise that I think really has been resonating with a lot of people is this concept of zero-based calendaring. So we think about creating a budget, right? You have your financial budget.
Yeah.
I say, okay, well, how much did I spend last month? Or how much did I spend last year? How do I want to change that? That's how most people live their lives, right? They look at, oh, here's kind of what my calendar is. How do I want to adjust it? And say, no, 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 no. The way to build a budget, the way to build your life is to start from scratch, start from first principles, saying, what do I want to accomplish? And what should my time budget look like as a result? If I'm going to design my life as opposed to someone else, how am I going to design it? How much time am I going to spend with my family? How much time am I going to spend with work? How much time am I going to spend exercising and eating and
Yeah.
sleeping and with friends and learning and reading and meeting new people, right? How do I want to design that life? And then you've designed it. Are you holding yourself to account? So every Friday, I have 30 minutes of my life that looks at the following week and said, hey, for this quarter, here's how I said I want my life to look. Within work, within the hours I said for work, here's how much time I want with clients. Here's how much time I want with my team. Here's how much time I want to be learning. Here's how much time I want to work on my product. Does my calendar look like that next week? If not, do I need to cancel some meetings? Do I need to move some meetings? Do I need to add some meetings? Zero-based countering. Build the life you want, because if you're not, who is?
It's good. I think I just came from a conference last week, and it was Glenn Lundy who said, build your business around your lifestyle, not your lifestyle around your business. And that's essentially what you're describing in the last little zero-based calendar is
Well,
like,
with all this,
yeah,
right? Otherwise, you're a tenant to your business. Your
right,
business owns you. Like, is the business working for you, or are you working for the business? If you're going to
right.
build your company,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it's a thing where you like constantly are involved in that practice. It's not like you create your ideal calendar and your values and like zero it out one week and it's like, oh, like autopilot. It's like as you evolve, as things shift, I'm sure as you grew your company, the things that you knew you had to lock in and say these are the things where I can find my most value at is different than the things when you first started, right? And so like it's an ongoing practice and of awareness and of growing and of paying attention to the resources that you have both financially and people resources to be able to continue to assess and add more value while staying true to who you are, centered on your values and priorities. Such an important thing.
that brings up a really good point. This is not a one-off activity, right? So I
Mhm.
have scheduled a couple hours every 3 months, every quarter, to look at it again. Now,
Yeah.
separately, if I go several weeks where I'm looking ahead and I say that calendar doesn't match what I said I wanted, then I may have to accelerate that and say, hey, something's changed. This is no longer working. How I'm now booking my time doesn't match how I said I wanted to book my time. What changed?
Right.
What's different? And that's
Right.
true with all the exercises in this, right? If you're going to take ownership of your mind, it's like having a good diet. You don't go eat well for a week and say,
Mm.
I'm set. I'm just doing milkshakes and cheeseburgers for the rest of my life because I ate well for a week. If
Yeah.
you go kill it in the gym for a month, you're muscular, you'll say, good, I don't need to exercise anymore. I did that
Right.
1 month. And it's the same with mind ownership, right? This is exercising. This is
Mm.
something you have to keep working on, but there's nothing more important to work on than owning your single asset, your most valuable asset.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Talk to us about your mindset around transitioning from, being an elite athlete to the things that you are in today. That's something that my nonprofit organization addresses, and I wrote a book, Who Am I After Sports, about it. So I'm always like really interested in how people pivot it, whether you want to address it from like, hey, here's some transferable skills that help me to be successful as an athlete, that also help me to be successful as a professional, as an entrepreneur, or like, was there sort of an identity crisis there and how did you kind of navigate that terrain? So I'm happy to, dive in anywhere you feel fit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both of those things, right? So, kind of where we started some of this is starting with the labels, right? Of,
Hmm.
hey, I
Hmm.
am an elite athlete. Right? Okay, well, then that makes it very tough when you're no longer that thing. Who are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
And getting to a point, and it took me a while, right? Like going through the injury and having an identity crisis, that's really difficult. If
Yeah.
that is your singular identity, if you roll it back to say, no, I am me,
Hmm.
and me of now is this elite athlete and is focused on this. But I am me, and I get to
Right.
shape what that is.
Yeah.
I get to have seasons of life that I can be many things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. It's hard when you're in it because it's so much who you are.
Yeah.
The other piece though is when you talked about are there skill sets or the things you learned being an athlete that poured over. And I mean, do you know about kind of the dopamine releases and how all that works? Is like the higher the high, the lower and the longer the low. So say coming from swimming, right? Olympics is a big deal. Gold medal is a big deal. But you see these people that's over, right? They got to the end, the finish line. And the high was so high when they were on the podium, but a day later, a week later, a year later, it's just empty. It's low. Yeah. And learning that it's not about the finish line, it's about the process. I love the process. I love the process of getting better every day. I love the process of proving I am capable of stuff that no one else thinks I'm capable of. I love the process of proving to the world I am better than the person racing next to me. That process, not about the finish line in that one race, but that process of each day of loving the work as opposed to the result, where the result is the work. The result I'm chasing is the work that carries for the rest of your life.
Let's go. Let's go. Get me hype. I just did a live stream last week about being committed to the work, not committed to the facade or the social media flair or the accolades. Like, be committed to the work. That's what all the greats do, baby. Like, that's the mama mentality.
Yeah, and it's the gift that keeps giving. That's the other piece. So when you talk about that dopamine release, right? If you're only getting joy, if you're only getting that dopamine hit at the finish line, then you have this huge fall off afterwards. And it lasts a long time.
For sure.
If it's, no, every day I show up and do the work, I am getting dopamine hits because this is what I'm here for. Then you can never, you can do that every day. You can do that regardless of if it's dribbling the basketball or if it's doing financial advice. Right? Like you could do it in so many realms. You take that mentality, you take that process, and you can excel at whatever you do. You will excel at whatever you do.
Love it. Love it. Oh man, this is so good. Let's kind of start steering the plane here. Would love to get back into TED and want to know, like, what's your goal? Like, what do you hope to accomplish by getting your idea out there to such a large audience with TED?
Yeah, it is about this personal enablement. It's about waking up from that sleepwalking that we've all been doing, of letting those jerks own our heads and saying, wait, no. Get out of my head. I own my mind. Here's how I'm going to take ownership today. Here's how I'm going to maintain that ownership going forward. And then whatever my calling is, whatever the impact I want to have in this life is, I'm better able to do it. Because I have that inner tranquility. I have that outer effectiveness because I own my most valuable asset, my mind.
I feel like there's people who, I think it was Brendan Bouchard who's known for saying that common sense isn't always common practice. Why do you feel like, some of the things you're saying are so they make so much sense, right? Like kick the bad out, the good in. Like be the owner of your space, don't allow other people to rent that space in your head. Like that's yours for you to own and manage and decide. But yet so few do that. Why do you feel like that is?
Yeah, there's a line Tim Ferriss often says of, hey, look, if knowing was all we needed, everybody would have six-pack abs. Like everybody knows what it takes. Very few people are committed to eating like you need to do, exercising like you need to work out. Right?
Dang it. Now I gotta eat right to get my six-pack.
But that comes in to where do we prioritize? We can say we value this. I value my health.
Right.
But as I sit watching 2 hours of TV each night, do I value my health? Or do I value sitting in front? Do I prioritize this other thing? Yeah. And so it come in full circle. We talk about that corporate retreat exercise of knowing your values versus your lived values.
Right.
Words are cheap. Action is all that matters. Look at your actions to tell you what you value. And if that's not what you want to value, then start acting differently. Beliefs follow actions, not the other way around.
Just dropping bombs at the end, man. You can't do that to the audience. They're not going to log off now. They're just going to be like more. Beliefs follow actions, not the other way around. Wow. I would poke at that and I'll make an argument that your beliefs influences your actions. But I love the thought that actions speak louder than words, right? You know, because it's
It,
true. It's true.
there are scientific studies about this, right? And,
Okay.
and it's not 100% one way or the other. It is that our beliefs can follow our actions. It's the fake it until you make it, right?
Yeah,
Fake
you
it
can't do
until
that.
you are it, right?
Mhm.
It's not faking. It's you're doing it, right? I'm
Right.
doing it, and so
Right.
no longer am I. And it ties to the mindset, right? Like, hey, every day I choose not to smoke, right? I'm doing it, but I'm a smoker who's choosing not to smoke, versus the mindset of I'm a person that doesn't smoke.
Right.
And
Right.
every day I'm choosing not to smoke because I'm a person who
Right.
doesn't smoke.
Right.
And so
Right.
you start doing it,
I
and
get
then you
you.
can change the belief system that you have
Yeah, yeah,
around
yeah,
why
yeah.
you're doing this action.
Yeah. You can't smoke and just have a belief that I'm not the person that
Right,
smokes
right.
with a cigarette in your hand. It doesn't work that way, y'all. You gotta put feet to your faith. You gotta put action to your beliefs. Your actions should speak louder than anything else that you say, right? I love the challenge of looking at your calendar to see what you actually value. And it's so fun. And the thing I like about it is it's so in alignment with our theme. For those of you who don't know the theme at TEDx Alexander Park, it is back to the basics, based upon the movie The Lorax, where the planet was destroyed because of profit over planet and profit over people. And the thing that restored the planet, the thing that brought them back to life, to health, to wellness, to wealthiness, to longevity, was getting back to the basics, taking care of the planet, being nice to one another, building relationships, developing leaders, like the basics of life that we tend to stray away from when we get caught up in the chase, in the hustle, in the ground, pursuing things that, what I believe, things that we already have. We already have. Like you talked about not chasing the dopamine hit of the goal, because you already have it. Like you can get the dopamine today from being the person who you think you need to be tomorrow. Like just showing up, giving your best, taking ownership over your mind and taking that action, you can actually start to feel those same emotions as if you had the outcome that you seek or desire. And then of course the outcome takes care of itself. And I'm not a, like every person gets a trophy guy or anything like that. Like I like to win. I'm an elite athlete. Like I like to compete and things like that. But there's too much attachment to the outcome and not enough to the journey. I always say to people that the process is not a means to an end. It is a gift within itself. Okay. The process is not a means to an end. It is a gift within itself. And people like you understand that because you do it and you live it each and every day. Would love for you to just kind of share some final thoughts as we start to close out the episode here. This has been phenomenal, by the way. I could talk to you forever. Um, but any final thoughts that comes to your mind as it relates to your idea or the things that you're passionate about and want to get out there as a message to the world?
Yeah, I want to roll it back to the basics, right? Creating an impact, the community, and the Lorax. If you're talking about getting back to the basics, it starts with you, right? There's a line from the Lorax: unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. It's about you. It's about the individual.
Yes.
So take care of this house first, and then you can take care of the world.
There we go. Look at that. Quoting the line from the movie. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Super powerful. Super powerful. Speaking of which, it starts with you, meaning that if you are watching this, if you're watching it live, let us know where you're tuning in from. If you're watching it replay, hashtag replay. And I want to encourage you to head over to TEDxAlexanderPark.com, TEDxAlexanderPark.com, and apply to speak on the main stage. Submit your idea, put it forward. You know, when I did my TEDx 3 years ago that has 2 million views, like I never would have thought I'd been a TEDx speaker. I was so afraid to speak. I hated talking in front of people, even though I had done it, but I didn't want to share my personal story. I didn't want to, there's no way, even when I went to the event, already got selected as a speaker. And by the way, I did so because I won a competition of like 1,000 people. and I won this competition, and I still didn't feel like I was good enough. Everyone's career was further than mine. They had more money. They had more degrees. They had more experience. And here I am with just an idea. Woo! But I tell you what, an idea is enough. An idea is enough to impact 2 million people's lives. An idea is enough. And I'll tell you so, I was so embarrassed about my wardrobe malfunction, and I was so embarrassed about my speaking skill at the time that I didn't even share my talk when it came out for the first 6 weeks, until I saw that someone from Russia, I believe it was, or Switzerland, hit me up, sent me an email 2 a.m, and told me that their life was impacted by my message. And I said, who am I, Daryl? So focused. Listen to this. This is so important. Talking about ownership of my mind. I said, who am I? I was so focused on my image that I wasn't focusing on my impact. Oh, and my self-consciousness, my insecurity was getting in the way of the impact that I could have in the world. And so that was the day that I did. What actually happened is that woman sent me that. I cried like a baby. I went to the YouTube video and I saw these comments of people from all over the world whose lives were being impacted by the message. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm standing in the way of more impact. My insecurity is standing in the way of more impact. So I'm just telling you, if you're watching this, you're like, well, I don't know. I don't have as much to say as Andrew here, or I don't know if I'm there yet. Like maybe I need my next book to come out, or maybe I need the next goal or the next achievement, or like there's so many better, more capable people than I. You are allowing your insecurity to get in the way of your opportunity to make an impact. So just go ahead, dig into your heart, find something you're passionate about, submit it for an idea, and make sure you support everything that we've got going on with TEDxAlexanderPark. Okay? All right, that's my preach-a-thon for today. Andrew, let us know where we can get a hold of you if we want to connect with you.
Yeah, the best would be my website, andrewmcconnell.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm super engaged and available there. I'm on all the socials, but those are the best two, my website and LinkedIn.
Love it. Love it. Head over. It's right there on the screen if you guys need it. Thank you so much. Let us know what your takeaway from today was. What's one thing, just one, doesn't have to be 100 things. What's one thing that you can take away to put into action in your life today? Like we said, we can tell what you value by looking at your calendar. From listening to this conversation, what now are you valuing at a deeper level? Are you going to go? Maybe that's your action. I'm going to go really assess my values by looking at my calendar. Pick one thing to make a tweak. And remember, knowing a thing isn't the same thing as doing a thing. Okay? You might have heard some things today that was like, oh, I know that. But really assess to see if that's something that you're doing in your life. Okay? We are truly seeking to make an impact here through TEDxAlexanderPark. And one of the ways that we know that we'll do that is by you taking action on the information that was shared today. So let us know what action you're committed to and what the results of that is as you begin to implement these principles in your life. We want to thank you again, Andrew, for coming on. Feel free to hang out for a second. And y'all, we're going to sign off here. Peace.
Thank y'all.